In this program, we discover the history of deep-sea sports fishing and why the Palm Beaches of Florida became the world epicenter of the sport. We learn why people like Ernest Hemingway and the Lone Ranger were attracted to the sport.
The Lone Ranger.
We visit with the family that invented the sport fishing boat and how those boats have changed over the years. And I sit in a fighting chair and argue with our producer.
Don't let me leave.
All right, we'll let you go.
He was an old man who fished alone in a skiff in the Gulf Stream, and he had gone 84 days now without taking a fish.
Those are the opening lines of The Old Man in the Sea, book by Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway was fascinated by the size, the speed, and the energy of the great fish that swam in the Gulf Stream that runs along the coast of Florida. The swordfish, the marlin, the sailfish, the mako, the great white. Hemingway was also fascinated by a Bahamian legend of a giant sea monster that swam along the Gulf Stream, but it was only available for viewing on nights of the full moon. Big game fishing was the perfect sport for Hemingway. However, catching the fish was one thing, getting them on board his boat before they were eaten by the sharks was another. Many of Hemingway's greatest catches ended up as lunch for the sharks. For Hemingway, sharks were the enemy. He kept a machine gun on board and would fire it at the sharks. He was one of the first to put his boat into full reverse in order to get his catch out of the ocean as fast as possible. But Hemingway was just one of the many famous people who were interested in deep-sea fishing. To the best of my knowledge, the Lone Ranger was not into sport fishing. And as far as I know, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon was also not into sport fishing. But the creator of both those characters, Zane Grey, was a devoted sports fisherman. Zane Grey was an American author, best known for his novels and short stories about the West. He was also a dentist, but I think we should deal with that in a different program. The earnings from his books and their adaptation to films gave Grey the money to spend his time pursuing his greatest interest, which was big game fishing. His son Loren claimed that Zane spent an average of 300 days a year on fishing boats. A favorite location was the Palm Beaches of Florida. In the interest of full disclosure, I should point out that I am okay at fishing, but rather poor at catching. As a result, most of my nautical life has been spent on sailboats. I started out at the age of 6 with a 7-foot Optimist, and except for a brief interlude on, or should I say in, the USS Philadelphia, a fast-attack nuclear sub, I continued with sailboats. Over the years, I've become friendly with a number of people who are devoted to fishing, and those that were devoted to deep-sea sports fishing gave me a real appreciation for that sport, and particularly the boats that are designed for that sport. For most of the authorities on the subject, including my trusted Wikipedia, the people primarily responsible for the great advances in sport fishing boat design were members of the Rybovich family. I had heard about them, but never met them. But what I heard sounded interesting, and the more I heard about them, the more I began to think about the family I grew up in. Here was an opportunity to learn about deep-sea sports fishing, to discover the techniques that were used to make these incredible boats, and to spend time with a family that made the family I grew up with look considerably less dysfunctional. Unbeatable. So here I am in the ocean, off the coast of the Palm Beaches.